We're back from EuroBSDCon. This week we're going to be talking with Steve Wills about mentoring new BSD developers. If you've ever considered becoming a developer or helping out, it's actually really easy to get involved. We're also going to have all the BSD news for the week and answers to your emails, all here on BSD Now, the place to be, SD. BSD Now, episode 57, The Daemon's Apprentice, recorded October 1st, 2014. Hey, I'm your host, Chris Moore.
And I'm Alan Jude.
And we're glad to have you guys with us this week. This week on the, I guess, the Wednesday after EuroBSDCon. Yes. So Alan and I are both very, very tired, having flown home. I came home, Monday night? It was close to midnight. And
Tuesday night, I got home at like 9.
Oh, yeah. It's been a long week. We didn't sleep a lot while we were over there, not only because of conference and events and stuff, but
just jet lag in the other direction. I never got caught up.
Yeah. We were talking before the show. Like, I think I was up at 3 a.m. every night, and you said you were up at like 6 a.m.
It was mostly because I didn't go to bed till 2, so 3 would have been a little ridiculous.
Yeah. It was so. Yes, so we're a little tired. We apologize if we kind of bumble around a little bit during the show today, but we will try to give you our feedback and what we thought of the conference and all that. It was definitely a fun time.
I guess we can go straight into that.
Yeah, I guess we can. We don't really have a news item where we have to talk about it, so let's do that. My thoughts on it. It was awesome. I mean, it was a great conference. The official number I heard was they had approximately 225 people there. And it was pretty crowded. Like, Bulgaria itself was neat. I had no idea what to expect, but it was kind of a neat mixture of modern and old, all kind of mingled into the same city.
The hotel we stayed in was very fancy.
Very fancy, old school fancy.
Marble
but then
everywhere.
The conference building we were at, and like that part of town seemed to be pretty new. With
the conference building seemed very, very like new and modern, and which was quite nice for the conference.
I think somebody asked if we had more or less than Malta. I think we had more at Malta.
Yes, Malta,
I think that was the record breaker.
Malta was 2 short of the record, which is the one that was in somewhere in the Netherlands in 2011. So we were 2 short, or one person short of the record, but then 2 people just happened to be at the hotel in Malta where the event was and saw the giant banners and registered at the door and
on site, like they knew what it was. They were like, check that out.
It's like, you're a BSD person, you haven't heard of EuroBSDCon? What are you doing? But anyway, they managed to actually push the number up to make it the biggest EuroBSDCon ever in Malta last year. But
do you remember what the number was?
Was it 253 or something like that?
Okay. So not much less than that. They said the average has been between 200 and 250. So I think this one was 225, which is like right in the middle. So that's perfect.
And it was definitely interesting to meet. We met a bunch of people that was their first time coming to the conference. Quite a few people that,
listeners of the show who came up and said, "Hey, we're here because of your show. Keep up the
work."
work."
A couple of people that were like, "I only came because you told me to." I was like, "Yes."
Yeah. So that's kind of weird. Like, I guess when we do this, here I am sitting, in my basement in Tennessee, and you're up in Canada, Alan. I forget there's people like all the way on the other side of the world who catch this, even though the time zone's all wrong for them and everything. They listen to the podcast later. So that's just really cool. Having that kind of global reach.
And it was very nice to get to meet a bunch of people, and they were all saying how they were very almost surprised by how nice everybody was. I'm like, what were you expecting? A bunch of grumpy old people?
It's like everyone's really accessible, and you meet all these big names in the community, and it's like, there's normal people. Go sit and have dinner with them at the at the social or whatever.
They organized buses to take us out for dinner a couple of nights, and one person was saying, they got seated across from Theo de Rat, and they were like, "Oh no, what am I going to do?" or whatever. And Theo introduces himself, and they start talking, and it's like, it's, that's how it is here.
That's just how it is. That's why you go to these
Yeah.
conferences, just having that face-to-face time with people that maybe you've interacted with them on IRC or via email,
Yep.
but actually sitting and like having a meal with these folks is just, you can't put a price
Well,
tag
yes,
on
we
that.
had
It's a lot of
on
fun.
Sunday night. I got invited to go out for dinner with Kirk McCusick and Eric Ullman. And when we started leaving the hotel, there were 5 of us. By the time we got to the restaurant, we had 10 people. So we,
snowballs.
So we asked the restaurant, and they rearranged some tables, and we sat down with 12 people or 10 people. And then somebody went and like tweeted our location or something. Or sent a text message to Dag Erling or someone, and then it asked the waiter, can you make room for 12 people? And the waiter's like, oh, so one more table at the end. He's like, no, 12 more people.
Yes, 12 plus.
Yeah, so we're already 10. And we don't want to go to 12. We want to add 12 on top of that. And then I think Ilya Bukulin showed up too. So we ended up with, I think, 23 people at dinner. Which is pretty good for
I think I was passed out at that point because I think I arrived at and I was done.
But we had a good time talking and all the interesting stuff. And I guess so. The actual conference, the first 2 days were tutorials and the Dev Summit.
We went to the Dev Summit though for most of it. I was there for just about all of it, and that was a lot of fun.
We got quite a bit discussed.
Of course, they discussed a lot about 11.0, which I forget. Did they have a timetable on that yet? Is that late next year? It should
be January of 2016. So we'll start seeing betas probably a year from now.
Yeah, like a holidays next year or something.
Yeah. So by this time,
October, November-ish.
This time next year, we should start seeing betas and stuff. So
lots of exciting stuff happening in 11.0.
Well, that was the other interesting thing was we had the same topic discussed at BSD Can back in May. And we pulled out the notes from that and walked through them and like, all right, which of these things? It's like, well, that's done and that's done and that's almost done. And we've actually solved that problem. And the foundation signed a contract with Oracle. So we're going to have official support for OpenJDK 8 instead of just having to do it ourselves.
We will have real Java binaries. Like, how cool is that? So that's been a long time coming, and I'm for one am very glad to see that. That means maybe I won't have to deal with all the little Minecraft issues because I've worked on that port in the past, and it should just work. One other tidbit I will mention. So we got 10.1 getting ready to come out here in about a month, and I heard that this is planned to they're planning to push the Haswell support in right before 10.1. So we should have an updated Xorg with Haswell drivers and all the latest goodness there. So that's been also a long time coming, and I'll be glad to see that go in.
Yeah, that was kind of in stealth mode. Like we heard somebody was working on it, but we hadn't seen a single bit of code. And then they're like, oh yeah, we're going to drop this all in just in time for 10.1.
Yeah, this is going in.
It's like, thank God. Okay. It's like, I'm like, how much longer can we go without this? We really need to make this happen.
Yeah. And now I guess I really have to get off my butt and buy one of those Intel NUCs now.
Yeah.
And get that set up. Like that.
Your face is coming into the show from one of them right now.
Oh, see? Well, you got, is that
no, that's the newer. That's the one that's Haswell.
Oh, okay.
So I went out and bought an older Ivy Bridge i3 one in order to screw around with FreeBSD on it. And now I'll be able to do FreeBSD on both.
That'll be awesome.
Because the other interesting thing was
pick up a couple
we were talking about power draw on laptops and stuff. And I was doing some tests on Monday in Bulgaria because I had nothing else to do in the afternoon once everybody else had left for the airport. Loading the i915 KMS driver cut the power utilization over like the EFI frame buffer sitting at the command prompt by like 3 watts. It dropped it from like 22 to 19 watts for my power draw.
Just
so that made a big difference there. And
cool. Yeah, I did see that. I saw some information about that on the list as well. So that's there's a lot of cool stuff happening. Like this is an exciting time to be involved with BSD and in all areas. We talked a lot about mobile, embedded, desktop, laptops. Now of course Xorg stuff's happening and there's just a lot of things going on in the FreeBSD space at the moment.
Most of the stuff working on the Chromebook. People starting to work on the Chromebook 2 already.
Yeah, they had that Acer Chromebook they had there. They auctioned off, or not an auction off, but they had a raffle.
Google gave it
at
away.
The end. And I talked to a developer who has one of those, and he said FreeBSD's pretty darn close to working pretty well on
Yeah.
that box. Haswell was one of the last bits he needed, but like the Wi-Fi was working, and they had to fix a few things with suspend resume. But that may be a great little
Yeah,
platform
and
to
I think
set up as your first FreeBSD
in
laptop.
that realm, we talked to OpenBSD developer who kind of explained the weird steps they had to go through to get the suspend resume to work on the Chromebook. So we just got to connect those two people, and then problem solved.
Yep, and hopefully that fixes it
all. And I guess
So,
speaking of exciting times, that was the keynote. Jordan Hubbard from now the CTO of IX Systems, but formerly from Apple, gave his talk looking forward to another 10 years, which was kind of a brief recap of how FreeBSD's gone in the last 20 years and what we got to do for the next 10 years.
Yeah, looking ahead to the future, what things do we need to better support and fix and change and whatnot to modernize. So again, good keynote, lots of good talks there. I will mention, I won't spoil it, but we did get, was it 9 interviews?
Yes, we got 9 interviews while we were there. So
we have a lot of them, some big names, people you'll recognize. So stay tuned for that. That'll be unfolding as the following months roll by.
I can think of 1 or 2 that were a little short, so we might double those 2 up. But in general, over the next couple of weeks, you'll get all kinds of great interviews.
Yep. So anyway, that's there's just a lot of good stuff there, and you really messed out. Good food, good times, good people, good information, good talks.
Yes.
I mean, it was a good EuroBSD con, and they announced for next year, for those who haven't seen or heard yet, it's going to be in Sweden, in Stockholm. So start making your plans now.
Yes, exactly. They haven't got the exact dates or the location yet, but it's going to be in Stockholm, Sweden, and that should be lots of fun.
Roughly this time-ish next year. So just kind of pencil in, October, late September-ish. One of those weeks will be EuroBSD Con.
And on top of all the great talks, I just had a lot of great conversations out in the hall or over dinner each night, and it was, or even breakfast. A lot of us met up for breakfast at the hotel, and I had quite a few interesting conversations there too.
Yep. So anyway, well worth going. If you've not been, please make plans to go to this or some other BSD event in the future. Speaking of, we have Neat BSD coming up, and
exactly a month from now, November 1st and 2nd.
Yep. So me and Alan will both be out there. So if you guys are in the Bay Area or can get to the Bay Area, I think, meetbsd.com. You can register for that.
They've updated the schedule. They have a firm schedule now, and they've added a bunch of extra speakers, including Brendan Gregg, who's, I imagine, going to be talking about dtrace.
Okay, nice. So you'll have to check that out. Yeah, it's meetbsd.com, and it's going to be at the Western Digital Building. So
and there's a nice hotel walking distance away from it. And they have a group right there.
It looks like we're going to be trying to live stream.
Yes, that was the other thing I was going to mention, is that we're going to try to do some live streaming from there. So probably set up a little table or something and try to talk to lots of people as they walk by.
Yeah, it's going to be a good time. Good time for all. So hey, we'll look forward to seeing some more of you out there then. But I suppose we should get into the news too. And, we'll probably talk about Euro for the next couple weeks. You'll expect us to as things come into memory, and we're a lot more rested.
And I think even just today's stories will bring up a couple of things. Like the first thing I think of is that our first story is about NetBSD. I think EuroBSDCon this year was the record number of NetBSD developers that actually attended, which is great news as well.
Well, okay. Actually, that reminded me of something. So I was going to make a comment on this, right? So I've been doing EuroBSD for quite a number of years now, BSDCan a long time. And, this year I was really encouraged because I've seen this shift happening in the last, we'll say 3 years, 3 conferences of people. I just kind of keep a tally in my head of how many MacBooks I see versus, laptops running FreeBSD or OpenBSD or whatever. And, I would go out on a limb and say this year it was either 50-50 or even skewed more towards FreeBSD or BSD running on laptops.
And it wasn't all ThinkPads either. Quite a bit of ThinkPads.
It wasn't. There was quite a mixture, but it was kind of cool to see. And as an amusing aside, I will mention that in the main conference hall, everyone who had a MacBook and hooked it up to the projector couldn't seem to get their resolution to work right, and everything got cut off on the screen. But FreeBSD just worked, so I don't know what's up with that, but just kind of put that out there.
Well, the other interesting thing is now that there was a change that went into the EUFI code during the conference that fixed booting FreeBSD under UEFI on MacBooks Airs.
On
Or MacBooks from 2011 and forward, I think.
Nice.
Maybe now some of those MacBooks that we do see will actually be running FreeBSD instead of OS 10.
Well, I had several developers I talked to who commented on that. They're like, yeah, I used to bring a MacBook, but now FreeBSD, the package system and everything's made it real easy just to pop it on my laptop. And for the most part, it just works. The NVIDIA driver runs great. And now that we're getting all the modern, Haswell support and this and that, this is a trend I hope to see continue going into future conferences as more and more people are dog fooding their platform.
Exactly.
So keep up the good work, folks. And this is exciting times. So I was very encouraged to see that. But okay, anyway, I did mean to get to the headlines here. I apologize. We already kind of strayed down another path there. But we're gonna get to your headlines, and of course, we're gonna try not to do too much Linux bashing this week. I think we've had enough of that this last week.
While we were away, lots of that happened. And I don't think anybody needs us to pile on top.
No. You're all well aware of what happened this last week. So anyway, first up, though, in our news headlines. So we have a link here, information about NetBSD at the Hiroshima Open Source Conference. And of course, as our producer mentions here in a couple of the comments about NetBSD developers are always hard at work, putting NetBSD on pretty much everything they can find.
Including some museum pieces.
Yes. They brought their exotic machines out to the conference, and of course, the link we have here has links to a bunch of pictures of different things. And let's see, what were they running on here? We had some Raspberry Pis with LCDs. That's pretty typical. The HP 9000. We had a Sharp W03 and W03 Advanced, a Sharp Zaris SLCX07, and they also demonstrated.
They built an emulator for an old. Well, they brought up one of the an old. X68i or whatever, but then they were also showing off emulators for it running on x86 and a MacBook.
Yeah, I'm just looking here through all the links they have to pictures and whatnot. Yeah, looks like these are mostly Twitter pictures of it. But of course, the NetBSD guys, props to them. They always find the weirdest stuff to run on and make NetBSD work on it. So this is pretty cool. So yeah, if you're into exotic hardware, or like to just see how they did some of that, check out the link in the show notes afterwards. And there's lots of pictures and a nice report on how the conference went as well. So you may want to take a look at that.
Nice long thread here about all the interesting stuff that happened.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I guess we should also mention that at the end of the conference, Hiroki Sato announced the dates for Asia BSDCon, which is March 12th through 15th. And the call for papers is open now until, if I recall, the end of
November 31st.
Is it the end of November or like November 7th? I think he gives us a little bit more time.
The tutorials was sooner.
Yes, because those they try to translate those, so it takes longer. So that the written material they give out to people that take the tutorials, especially in Japan, is available in Japanese as well as in English.
So the deadline for papers is November 28th. So last week in November.
So you have less than 2 months to hurry up and write your paper if you want to get a free trip to Tokyo.
Yes, I will be trying to get that done here, hopefully in the next week or two. Sit down, write a paper. I'm not quite sure what I'm going to talk on yet, because usually I give one talk the whole year. I give it Asia, Euro, and Canada. So I'm hitting all the three major zones.
But I guess Asia's the first conference of the next year, so you have to come up with something new, eh?
I usually what ends up happening is I end up writing a paper, around my birthday in October. So I get that done, written, and then just kind of refine it throughout the year.
Well, I'm looking at maybe submitting a tutorial. So.
Okay, well, fantastic. So there you go. If you want to hear possibly a talk by me and a tutorial by Alan, you need to come out to Asia BSDCon. So check out their website, 2015.asiabsdcon.org, if you'd like to get information on that upcoming conference. And let's see here. So next news item. So FreeBSD's Linux simulation, the ports have gotten an overhaul this last week. So if you've been a long-time user, and I know PCBSD, we've been doing this for years now. We've been running Fedora 10 as the Linux emulation layer.
That's not really the emulation, but so when you want to run a Linux application, there's the Linuxulator, which is the kernel module that actually translates Linux system calls into FreeBSD ones and makes the application work. However, an application will be compiled expecting such and such a version of glibc and OpenSSL and all of those, and those will have to be Linux binaries rather than FreeBSD binaries so the application can use them. And so, yes, you had the option of installing Fedora 10 to give you the base set of packages that you would expect on a Linux machine.
Sure.
But, those are 6 or 7 years old now. A bunch of them have security problems.
They're very stale.
Yeah. And applications have moved on from those as well. Now, oftentimes you need a newer version of something in order for it to work. So,
well, the only thing we've been using it for is Flash support for a long time, and Skype. But even that, Skype doesn't work on that anymore. So we needed an update. But
XMJ, Johannes Mixner, who I met at Malta last year, him and I had been working on it. He'd done most of the work. I was doing an offshoot of his work to do 64-bit versions, although those require some more changes to the FreeBSD kernel first, so those are still a work in progress. But so this means that now the ports tree in FreeBSD has a complete set of CentOS 6.5 binaries you can use. That part of the reason for that is that CentOS 7 is 64-bit only, so obviously isn't much use for 32-bit apps yet. And that's why we started with 6.5 instead of going directly to 7.
Yep. So that's now in the ports tree, and I will mention we just switched to it right before the show. I just committed the changes in PCBSD to switch us to it. So if you're somebody running on our Edge packages, you expect to see those this weekend. So expect to see some new CentOS 6.5 stuff get downloaded. Not only is that newer, but that gives us the option to run a newer version of Skype, so we can now connect to the network again. Try all that out. Yeah. Matter of fact, I'm assuming it's a new enough version of Skype that has the multi-group video support. I may end up running my laptop here on PCBSD and being able to do this show. I won't even need to have the windows for Skype anymore. So that will be very helpful.
Fancy.
What was that? Oh, fancy. Yes. Well, I've already tested, like with the old Skype, I tested the video camera and the microphone and all that. Everything just works.
We've done an episode with it. It does work.
Yeah. It's possible. It just needed the newer version. So anyway,
I don't know when that'll become the default in FreeBSD, but it's definitely an option available to you now. So
you got to set it as CTL for the Linux kernel version.
We tried to get the default change to that, but it was too late to get it into 10.1. Even though it was a one-line change.
Well, and if it's something you want and you don't want to mess with those, like I said, PCBSD will have it on by default. So when our 10.1 releases around the same time as FreeBSDs, you could either grab ours or connect to our package repo and pull our stuff as well.
And Chris and I were talking just before the show about how to get a Debian base in there so that you might be able to run Steam.
That's what I'm looking forward to. I think that would be interesting and open up some unique possibilities for games.
So I think if you do...
Matter of fact, you know how we've seen these benchmarks over the years, FreeBSD runs Linux games faster than Linux or graphics and whatnot. It'd be interesting to do some benchmarks with that and see if we can run the Linux version of Steam with better frame rates and stuff than actually on Linux. So that could be really cool. Looking forward to seeing some of that happen. Okay, so what's the next item
one is pfSense 2.2 is now available in beta. So this is the newer pfSense based on FreeBSD 10. So that sucks in all those improvements to PF to make it multi-threaded and make it be able to use more of your CPUs and just generally be much, much faster.
Plus a slew of new drivers, I'm sure. There's probably a ton of new NICs going from, I guess their older version was on 8.3.
Yeah, 8.3 when they backported some NICs, but by going to 10, they get a whole slew of new stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Especially all the...
Yeah, I know. I had tried the older version of pfSense, and I had some cheap gigabit NICs, and they didn't have a driver for it yet. So having a version of this available will be very
So
handy.
it runs 10 stable, so it's much newer than 10.0. It'll be probably something just before 10.1. They switched the backend from a fast CGI to PHP FPM, which will make it scale up and down the number of backend processes it needs, which is good. Upgraded the PHP to 5.5. Switched the captive portal code to use SQLite instead of, I don't know what they were using before. Fixed a bunch of other issues in the PHP. Updated the default serial speed to be 115, 200, because that's better than 9600. They updated the new etc TTYs from 10 stable. This means that if you start pfSense in Beehive, it'll just work out of the box now instead of requiring the modifications. And they also set the default sysctl for ICMP reply from interface to 1, so that when an ICMP packet comes in, it'll go out the interface it came in on rather than the default route for that interface, which can just make your trace routes make more sense. And a couple of interesting things. They imported Unbound to use as the default DNS resolver instead of DNS mask. You can still switch to the old one if you want, but it won't be the default. They've removed bind from FreeBSD base, and so they switched some of their DNS utilities, right, using drill instead of dig, and different NS update and all that fun stuff. They now have AJAX DNS updates for firewall logs, so they load the log and then do the resolution instead of having to wait for it.
Cool.
And lots of other stuff. Obviously, FreeBSD 10 also has much different CARP support, so they've imported a lot of interesting changes there. They also have a way to permanently set CARP into maintenance mode, which will persist at rebooting and allow you to basically take a router out of a pair for reconfiguration and so on. They did a bunch of interesting stuff there.
It's like some IPsec backend changes.
Yep. And they're sponsoring even more work to get IPsec to be much faster. We'll talk about that later. A couple weeks from now, we have some interesting interview about that. Lots of other stuff to work with different ISPs, like with PPPoE, and also being able to send a DHCP v6 request out over an IPv4 only connection, so that you can then get an IPv6 address to use, which is interesting. I guess some ISP required something like that. And lots of other interesting stuff. They updated the list of stuff for DynDNS and allow reordering, batch deleting, and disabling of static routes, so that you can have a route you can turn on and off instead of having to add it and remove it all the time. Lots of other stuff. Also added a hybrid outbound NAT style that allows the user to keep the existing automatic behavior, but layer manual rules on top of it, so that you can, if you need to do something a little specific, you can add that, but not have to, do it for everything, have the default original rules. So lots of interesting new features, including updating the OS fingerprint database they use, so that you can do things like not allow Windows XP machines on your network to reach the internet.
Boo.
Yep.
Well, very cool. Of course, we have a link to the full changelog, which is up on their wiki. You can find that.
Huge list. I didn't realize how big it was.
It's a very long list. Yeah, we could do a whole show just reading that bullet point by bullet point. There's a lot of stuff there. But we'll let you guys take a look at some of that. But so they've hit beta. This is their first beta. They have a release schedule, Alan? When do they expect?
I haven't seen a release schedule. I imagine they're waiting to see how the first beta goes before deciding how to do a release schedule.
Okay, well, hopefully
this is a big change for them, going from 8.x to 10.x.
This is not a minor point release. So if you are a pfSense user or consumer, grab this, test it, let them know if you find anything ASAP so they can get it in before they do their release. Okay, well, next up, we have an article about NetBSD on the Raspberry Pi.
Some awesome ANSI art. Look at that.
And that
reminds me of the old BBS days.
Oh, those were the days, weren't they? I wonder how long that would have taken to download on my 14.4.
One character at a time.
That's right. But anyway, lots of you guys have Raspberry Pis out there. It's been a popular hacking platform, and this article is going to show you how to install NetBSD on it. As of right now, you'll need to use a current snapshot to get that done. So just FYI. It also shows you how to grow the file system so you can fill up an SD card, some package source basics, how to get initial things set up there. And I guess at this point, the question is, can you find something that you can't install NetBSD on? I mean,
it is NetBSD.
Right? That's going to be the bigger problem.
They have a nice case there for it. I saw George Neville Neal had an interesting case for his as well.
Yeah, lots of neat stuff out there. So again, interesting article. Take a look. If you have a Raspberry Pi sitting around and like to put another BSD on there, this might be a great way for you to try NetBSD if you never have before. This is a good weekend project to play with.
I love the awesome comment at the bottom. I should probably also mention that this is smaller than a toaster.
That is true. Matter of fact, with the
how is someone
small, the Pi, you could how many devices could you embed this into and say, look, NetBSD runs on blah?
I'm just thinking, how have nobody's used the GPIO ports to control their toaster with like a temperature sensor or something? Because you never, the toast, it always comes out not done enough or done too much, right? I was like, I want a computer to get my toast exactly how I like it every time.
Only NetBSD can properly toast bread to the perfect consistency.
Exactly.
That would actually be really funny. a neat port or project. Somebody
the most interesting
a BSD toast.
The most interesting one I've seen done with a Raspberry Pi was they embedded it in an old like 50s tabletop jukebox. So it's got all the buttons, and it would send the different electrical signals to the Raspberry Pi, which then would go over the internet and cause the music to be streamed over the Sonos system in the house. So you had this old like 50s style jukebox thing, and when you picked a song, it would play it over the network sound system.
Nice. That's really cool. Well, again, interesting link. They got some good pictures there. See his awesome Raspberry Pi case, what it looks like. So yes, you'll want to click on that. And that's actually the end of our weekly news. But before we move into our interview for the week, of course, we want to do mention the first sponsor for the show. So we'll mention this week Tarsnap. And, of course, that URL is tarsnap.com/BSD Now. And, of course, if you're doing backups or you're not doing, well, first of all, you need to be doing backups. So get on that, please. Don't wait. If you wait, it might be too late.
There are only two types of people in the world, those who have lost data and those who will. So get it backed up so that you can be, make sure that you're good.
You avoid the pain and suffering that most of us have gone through. Like, just learn from our mistakes. So get your backup set up with tarsnap.com. They have clients for just about everything. Of course, this is a fully encrypted backup. Nothing leaves your box that isn't encrypted. So you don't have to trust Colin. You don't have to trust the guys who write Tarsnap. You can look at the code to verify that it does what it says it's supposed to. And your data will be safe and secure from not only the developers' prying eyes, but agencies and 3-letter organizations.
No one can force Colin to give up your data.
Yes.
Even with a rubber hose.
That's
Hopefully
right.
that never happens to Colin, because he's a nice guy. We hung out with him quite a bit
we did. We spent a lot of time with him.
I swear there was something he told us to mention. I can't remember it now.
We were talking about doing an interview with him at some point, and he was like, "You should mention that 3-line patch I did."
Oh, right.
Is it 2 lines of comments?
What was the 3-line patch for? Oh, I remember now. Okay, Colin committed a fix to FreeBSD because the one of the utilities under the games distribution set that's part of the base OS primes. Incorrectly told you that a couple of numbers were prime when they're not. Specifically,
that's right.
When they upgraded when someone updated the utility from 32-bit to 64-bit, they missed some other change in the code, and it would cause it to tell you certain numbers were prime when they weren't.
So didn't they just yank out all those games from the source tree?
The plan now is to grab the ones that are still good, like Fortune and Primes and Random, move those into the base system, and then just get rid of the rest, and basically
just not have that option for just not games packages.
Because none of them are really games. They're more just like miscellaneous utilities or whatever. They're small enough they might as well be in base, and the ones that aren't any use can just go away or live in the ports tree.
Go away, or if you really want them, port them. Like, just put them in the ports tree. It's not.
And so that will reduce the number of distribution sets. Because we also talked about the docs people were also talking about getting rid of the docs one and making it a port as well.
Well, cool.
Because all of that will help with the other thing we talked about at the Dev Summit, which was packaging the base system.
Yes. Make it a little smaller, neater. We don't need some of these legacy obsolete apps.
Speaking of, in order to get that to work, BAP needs a BSD licensed or similar 3-way merge library. He's found a bunch of tools that can do 3-way merges, but their code wasn't formatted in such a way it'd be easy to just take out the 3-way merge functionality and put it into his tool. So if you happen to know of a 3-way merge library or would like to write one, we would definitely be interested in hearing about that.
Great place to get involved. There's lots of examples out there, so I guess he needs it more in a C library form is the critical bit, so that they can integrate that with packaging.
So that when you're updating the base system, it can merge changes to your /etc files.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Very cool. Okay, well, we'll be back in just a moment with our next segment. And we're joined now by Steve Willis of the FreeBSD project. We're glad to have you with us today, Steve.
Yes.
Thanks.
Cool. So first question we ask everyone, give us a little bit about yourself, your background. How did you first get introduced to BSD?
Well, I had been using Linux for a while and was trying various things, messing with, OpenBSD, FreeBSD, messed around with Debian. I was mainly a Red Hat user, started out with Slackware. I think this was in the early 2000s, like 2002, 2004, I forget. And I think, I was installing various things on some spare hardware, and the thing that impressed me most was I was using FreeBSD and I was doing the network install, and my DSL kept going out, and FreeBSD's install just kept going, and as soon as it would come back online, it would pick back up where it left off, and that was something that the others didn't do, and that really, I think that's when I got hooked, and I was like, okay, this works.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
So cool. I've been using it since then, doing a lot of different things, gradually getting more and more involved, and having fun with it.
Cool. Mm-hmm. So how did you eventually become a committer?
Well, like I said, I was doing a lot of port stuff. I always found ports very usable and useful. And, you send enough patches in, and eventually they say, you can do this yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So
I'm tired of seeing emails from you. Please go do it
You no longer require adult supervision.
Yes. So I know we're here kind of to talk about mentoring new developers today. So what does mentoring a developer mean, and have you done it?
Yeah, I've mentored probably 3 or 4 people now. A couple of them have unfortunately had time commitments change. So I've had one person who is no longer mentored, and I have another who's about to go that way. But yeah, I've mentored a couple of different people, and mentoring is really just about kind of a next step up from, you don't need adult supervision at all, or you don't need a lot of adult supervision to, you don't need very much at all, really, right? Mm-hmm. It's kind of less and less and less. So you start out, sending in patches, and people make changes, and then, gradually say, okay, this person has a lot of patches under their belt, and, has the experience, so let's, get them on board and save them the trouble of sending in a PR and waiting for someone to commit it. And, so you look for those folks too. I think I've done that a bit, the folks that look like they have the skills and the willingness, and, you find those folks. And mentoring is just about taking them from that next step of, okay, they're sending in patches and their patch quality is better and better. And then, really all they need to do at some point is just run them by somebody, have someone kind of review them and ensure that there's nothing wrong with anything they're doing, and then they can commit.
Yeah, and I guess the other part of mentoring is also just getting them, becoming actually part of the project and getting to know the ropes and where all the fun toys are hidden and all that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there is a lot of that too. Getting the freebsd.org email address, having your PGP key published and all that kind of stuff, having access to the cluster machines that you can use to build things if you don't have resources to do that yourself.
Mm-hmm.
All those different pieces of sort of integrating with the community are part of that as well. Yeah.
So what's the process like for a new would-be source or ports committer?
It's really just about getting involved, having a piece of the project or, ports that you care about. Say, I know most about ports, but even I think that applies, to source tree. If you're, particularly interested in some driver or something like that, maybe the USB stack in general, say, or any area, and just getting involved and knowing, say you care about, I work on Ruby ports a lot. Having an area that you care about, working on that a lot, sending in a lot of PRs, having people recognize you and in the quality of your work.
Cool.
From there, there's a lot of mentoring sort of starts out with getting access, and then sort of working your way through some of the initial commits of adding yourself to the handbook as a committer and committing PGP key and that stuff.
Publishing the news article and yeah.
Absolutely. all that stuff, and then sort of just getting into the stuff that you care about.
Yep. So once can anyone get started working towards it? Like, what do they have to do to, I guess, is there anything other than just sending a lot of patches, and how do you kind of indicate your willingness to actually do more than just send some patches?
Well, I think it comes down to that mainly. Although, if you're kind of only focused on, like, say, the 2 ports that you care about, people are less likely to sort of be looking at you as a committer, because you only care about those 2 ports. Right. So if you are more interested in ports broadly, that certainly helps. Posting on mailing lists, helping out with issues that other folks have. Testing things even is a big issue. Saying, okay, someone sends out a call for testing of, hey, here's the new Xorg, or the new KDE. Testing that out can be a big step as well.
Cool.
All right, so we're ready for rogue committers.
One more from me. Once someone's been cut loose from the mentor, do they start mentoring other people right away, or is there a system for that, or what do you have to do to be able to be a mentor?
Being a mentor is largely about willingness and experience and
time.
Having the knowledge to review other folks' commits and really look at them in detail and understand every line of everything they're changing and how it relates to everything else in the ports tree. Right. Basics are like ensuring that you don't break index, and stuff like that. Don't create loops, and dependency loops and stuff like that are bad. But also, knowing that, okay, we're deprecating, BDB, so you're relying on the old version. Well, you shouldn't do that, because that's being deprecated, and keeping up with kind of the current day-to-day stuff as well. But once you have that knowledge of how ports works, you certainly are probably qualified to mentor someone. And I think, I really encourage all committers to do that, whether they're, source reports or docs folks. We can all use more folks. And I think if you look at the bug database, there's always folks who are sending in patches, and the more of a positive response they get, I think the more involved they're going to be. And the more involved they get, the more likely they are to become committers and then go on to mentor others. So that's one thing that I really have focused on in the last year, say, is, ensuring that I can do that I can find those people in the PR's database. And, I started doing that because, I thought, well, I'm only one person and I want to do as much as I can. And the way that I can increase my effectiveness is by helping others be more effective.
Or bringing more people into the project.
Exactly.
Building an army of minions.
Yeah. Martin certainly has his army.
Yes. So has the project ever seen a rogue committer? Somebody who's really abused the access they've been given?
I don't know if I would say that there have been any rogue committers. There are certainly rogue commits at times. Things that people do that others disagree with, that maybe weren't discussed enough ahead of time, or weren't well understood enough, or weren't tested enough. There are all types of things. And even myself, I have had mistakes that I've made, shall we say, at one point, updating the default version of Ruby and then having to change that back. But, it's always about sort of fixing it.
Yeah, sure.
As the main focus of, okay, what's the right thing and how do we fix it?
Yeah. So have there been a fairly large number of new developers and committers joining the project so far this year?
This year, yeah, it's been pretty good. We have always a pretty steady stream of, I think, so many per month, really is what I notice, more than per year. But yeah, there's been a good number. There's always room for more, like I said, I encourage everyone to mentor if you can. But yeah, we always have a good number of folks who are interested in both mentoring and being mentored. And so there's a good number, definitely. I don't know if I know the exact number. I'd have to go look, but there's some folks.
Cool. So what are some of the big current open tasks you'd like to see some new committers tackle?
Well, not too long ago, the bug database was getting kind of large in terms of open PRs and untriaged PRs, but some folks have stepped up recently and improved that a bit. So I think now there's probably not anything too large that I would say, we need more folks on this. There's just a lot of different things. There's, areas that need maybe deeper expertise on one particular issue, rather than, the broad sort of triage or, clearing up PRs in broad categories.
Yeah, I imagine it'd be nice to see more people from certain upstream projects to help maintain their ports because they know the app better than maybe a random FreeBSD ports person would.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's always good to have folks who know how an app is supposed to behave, how it's supposed to work, and can tell you if it's working properly. A lot of times, I've looked at testing in different areas throughout my use of FreeBSD, and there's always build testing, but then there's always functional testing, runtime testing, and it can be easy to say, well, this builds, but does it work?
Right.
Yeah, we've seen a lot of GUI apps where it's like, well, it starts, but when you actually start clicking buttons, like nothing works.
Yeah, so it even passes the kind of the smell test, right? It starts up, so it's good, but if you don't know how the app's supposed to work, it's harder to tell if it's working that way.
Sure.
So, Steve, is there anything else that you're currently working on? Anything big, interesting things?
Small. Not really. I've been trying to clean up the Ruby PR backlog this week, and have pretty much got that down. Trying to get one last doc patch committed to Ruby, and then I'm going to go back to looking at making Ruby 2.0 default, so that I can make 2.1 default pretty soon as well. And then, one thing I worked on, like I mentioned, testing. I was working on Jenkins and having Jenkins build test ports commits for a while. I need to get back to that. But it was, build testing every commit, much the way the QA Tinderbox does. The goal of that was to really be able to send out mails about individual commits and say, okay, this commit broke something.
Right, so that, even though people are supposed to test and maybe even did test their port when they committed it, before they committed it, in a different environment, maybe it doesn't work like they thought it did. And,
ports are a complicated thing. There's a lot of moving parts, and it may work here, but then somebody's got a different version of something installed. Oh, now it don't work.
Right, exactly. I mean, it's easy to say, well, it builds on 10.0. Oh, it doesn't build on 8.0.
Well, so since you're so involved in the Ruby ports, have you heard anything about this idea for package 1.4 to have this common repo support where we'd be able to just deal with Ruby gems without having to create a port of each one?
Yeah, I think that's a nice feature idea. There was also some talk of being able to have package hook into other package managers so that it would be able to depend on the package from gem itself rather than having to have a gem port.
Okay, nice.
Much like the existing, or, well, I don't know if that still exists, the BSD pan stuff that you had with CPAN, where CPAN would install and then that would register in the old package tools, although I don't think that works anymore.
Yeah, I don't think that works anymore, but the idea is to replace that and to expand it to do like the same thing for Python and Ruby and so on.
Yeah, that'll be really nice.
I guess there's one other thing we were going to ask you about was, are there any further plans for barbecue BSDCon?
I've been thinking about it. I have been pretty busy lately. But I need to start working on it now if we're going to do it. So I am going to start getting in touch with the folks that I have in mind for a hosting location and see if they're available for the time that I have in mind. I'm actually thinking of May and stealing BSD Can's week or so, or maybe the week after, since BSD Can's
BSD
moving.
Can's moving, so. Yeah,
that'd be cool.
Seems like...
Although I don't know, it's good because the location I'm looking at is at a university as well, so they'll be available that time of year.
Everything will be over.
But the weather is a little nicer. Well, not quite as hot, I guess, in Canada in May than it is in North Carolina in May.
Well, it can be a little cooling in Ottawa in May sometimes. So.
Yeah.
Yep. Cool. Well, anything else you want to talk about before we sign off here?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. Well, good shape. Well, thank you so much for being on the show with us this week, Steve.
It was nice talking to you.
Thanks for having me.
Appreciate it, and we'll be back in just a moment. Okay, and we're back. We're going to go ahead and do our weekly news roundup. But before we do, we want to mention, of course, the other sponsor for this week's episode, which, of course, is IX Systems. And, we've talked a lot about IX Systems, but a couple things we want to mention in particular this week. First up, FreeNAS 9.2.1.8 release is now available. So if you're running a FreeNAS box, it's time to update. But they have a list of bugs. Some of the notables, though. They fixed a bug in the none cipher and replication, which erroneously reported an error on a successful.
That's because when you enable the none cipher, it writes a message warning you that you're not encrypting your data every time you open the connection. And so when they saw, when their script saw an error printed out, it figured that was a problem, not that it was just a warning.
Something bad happened when it didn't.
But it's there to warn you so that you don't do it accidentally.
Yep. They said they don't enable LZ4 compression on replication by default if you're upgrading from a pre-9.2.1.7 release.
So that if you have replication set up with maybe an older FreeNAS or something, that enabling that won't cause it to so that you'll still be able to import the pool on an older version of FreeNAS if you're upgrading. If you're starting fresh, then they assume that all of your versions of FreeNAS from then on will be new. But if you're upgrading, they are a little more cautious now.
Cool. They also got some multiple kernel iSCSI CTL improvements, includes a VMware VAI and Microsoft ODX acceleration support, improved performance and fixes for a number of bugs, and of course, kernel iSCSI can be activated by checking the experimental target checkbox under services iSCSI, so you might want to check that out. They improved the performance of viewing snapshots when replication tasks are set up. Allow binding of CIFS to specific IPs, fixed LDAP bind URLs when using TLS, and validate some Active Directory advanced stuff.
And Unix permissions when Mac permission variable button is selected so that your NetAtalk does not cause you issues. Fixed the bug in the mail sending routine used by FreeNAS so that certain mail servers would do silly things.
Yep.
And they also, even though Bash is not the default system shell in FreeNAS or FreeBSD, because they installed Bash so that when you SSH into your FreeNAS, when you use the web interface thing, you could, so that users that didn't even know what FreeBSD was but were using FreeNAS would have a shell they would expect. And so while it shouldn't have been vulnerable to anything anyway, and your FreeNAS should be protected from random people on the internet poking it with a stick anyway, they fixed it just to be safe.
Just in the, be on the safe side and be a little proactive.
And it definitely sounds like they're hoping that FreeNAS 9.3 will be the next release quite soon.
Yes, that's going to be fantastic. So, of course, that's the first thing we want to mention here. But second thing, Meet BSD, IX Systems sponsors and puts on that conference out in the Bay Area. So
they just expanded it as well. They added more speakers. So on top of the interesting people that were already coming, if I scroll down here, they've also added Brendan Gregg, who I assume will talk about dtrace and other interesting things. And Rick Reed and some other interesting people. Jordan Hubbard will be there, obviously. And Kirk McCusick is doing a very, what sounds like a very interesting talk. Pull up the agenda quick here. I'm trying to remember what it was worded as exactly. Kirk McCusick, A Narrative History of BSD with Beer. And on top of the couple of talks they're going to have, they're also going to mix in all the unconference elements. So the plenary session at the beginning will be interactive. Then they will have agenda brainstorming spin wheel. So for that one, I imagine that's where we will decide what the little working groups we want to have are going to be about. So the Birds of a Feather session and the breakout sessions. Then they're having Stump the Chumps, which I'm guessing is some kind of game show type thing. It sounds like it'll be interesting.
I don't know.
Yes, it definitely sounds fun though.
Yeah, we're definitely going to have fun live covering this while we're out there.
Then they'll have the speed geeking, which is kind of like speed dating, right? So there'll be probably about 10 experts on different fields sitting at little stations, and you'll be assigned a group of other people to work with. Specifically, they try to get people you might not know so that you'll meet them as you do this. But then you go around to each of the little stations, spending 5 or 10 minutes, getting they give you a brief summary of what they're talking about and let you ask questions. And it's very interesting because normally at a conference you hear a bunch of long lecture style talks and maybe get to ask a question. But in this, you're in a smaller group, so it's easier to ask questions, and you get to see every single speaker for a couple of minutes instead of
having to pick and choose a couple.
Yeah, like at EuroBSDCon, there were 3 tracks going on at once, and it's like, well, how do I decide which one to see? Then they're also going to have lightning talks, so that'll be a bunch of short talks to the whole room or whatever, and then they'll do the collaborative breakout sessions where I think there'll be talks about beehives, ZFS, building appliances, and a bunch of other interesting topics.
Yeah, it should be a good conference. Yep. Definitely looking forward to it. And again, if you're in the Bay Area, there's no excuse not to go. So like you need to be there. So please register ASAP so they can start getting a head count.
Only $75. Be prepared. For what you're getting, it's a really cheap conference.
That's a really inexpensive conference.
That's basically just to pay for the food and such.
Yeah. You're coming out ahead on that one. So. Yeah, if you're anywhere near the area, no excuse. Try and get out to meet BSD. Yep. We'd love to meet you there. Stop by and say hi, of course. And if we're live streaming, say hello to the friends and family back home, right?
So yes, it'll be at Western Digital's headquarters in San Jose.
Yep. So hey, we need to, of course, mention the sponsor, URL for that as well for what we're doing here. So ixsystems.com/BSD Now.
Yes.
Let them know that we sent you. Fill out the form. Download their free guide they have on how to purchase a server for open source. The things you need to know before you select a vendor.
And then
good things you need to talk to management about and stuff.
Yeah. And then you can get talking to them about what hardware you need. Tell them what problem you're having and what you need to do, and they will help you find the best hardware to fit your needs and your budget.
Excellent. So yeah, definitely get in touch with these guys. They know what they're doing. I mean, heck, they're putting on BSD conferences too. So very good and active in the community as well. So if you can, try and support
IX Systems.
Gosh, I am tired. IX Systems. I work there, right? It's been one of those days, guys.
Yeah.
Right, and let me get the IV here, the caffeine drip going.
But yes, like you were saying, not only are they a part of the community because they're almost exclusively staffed by FreeBSD developers and so on, or people that have been doing BSD for years. But they not only are they putting on this conference, but they sponsor all of the other conferences as well.
Yeah, big sponsor of Euro. We were
and
just at
Asia and BSD Can, and
not to mention the myriad of smaller Linux conferences they send people
exactly.
to all
That's
year.
the other thing is they actually go out to almost every Linux conference I've ever heard of and make sure the BSD flag is flown there. And
yeah, poor Drew Levine. I think she's away more than she's home at this point. She's at so many.
And she only
Linux
does the East Coast.
Talks. Yeah. So I mean, that's also something we should mention. If you're close to a local Linux conference, a lot of times you can get out there and we'll have an IX Systems/FreeBSD booth as well, so you can go grab a swag and talk to whoever's there, some of the developers or people from IX who are there promoting FreeBSD, and just a great opportunity to get in touch with folks maybe in your area. Well, cool. Anything else we need to mention?
Buy servers now. Good job.
Buy servers. Yes. Buy more servers. or free NES
Yes.
minis.
Well, that's a server.
Big box.
But
something. Yeah, but
Well, yes.
it doesn't have to be tens of thousands of dollars when you can get something small that goes under your desk. So.
Well, even if you're getting an actual server, I built a server with IX that only cost like $800 one time.
Dang, nice.
It's just basically a router rather than a server, but.
Still, but that's the point. They can do that to everything, behemoth systems down to tiny systems and everything in between. So talk to these guys. They will get you hooked up with whatever makes the most sense for the problem you're trying to solve. Okay, well, let's get into the news roundup. So first up, Midnight BSD 0.5 has been released. So I know we haven't really talked a whole lot about Midnight BSD, but they have announced their new version, 0.5. Looks like they've got a round of the latest security patches for FreeBSD, driver updates, and some various other small things. And we'll put the call out if there's a developer out there who'd like to come on the show sometime and tell us more about the project. This is your golden opportunity.
We already
Drop us a line.
Talked to the guy.
Yeah, I say, but I mean,
another one.
Give us an update on what's going on. Yeah, another developer.
Because we learned the meaning behind the logo and the name, and it's because it's named after his cat.
Yes.
Yeah.
But yeah, it sounds like they got some exciting stuff going on. So
they upped the maximum length of a username from 16 to 32. Updated all the Intel NIC drivers, a bunch of other interesting things. They bumped the number of routing tables up from 16 to 65,000.
Well, yeah, why
and
not?
They have the new Vertio driver, so you can run it in Beehive.
They added Subversion to base as SVN Lite. That's interesting. They got rid of Spark 64 platform support. Oh, here, right?
Or not.
Right? Okay, well, anyway, moving on. So let's see. Next up here, the BSD router project. We actually had an interview talking about that.
I was going to say that our producer is going to yell at us for spilling the beans, but we
won't mention names.
We happened to talk to somebody who might have founded the BSD router project, and it might have also actually founded FreeNAS before it was taken over by IX Systems.
Yeah. So anyway, spoiler, that's coming in a future episode, so stay tuned. I don't know when. We haven't. I don't think
we haven't made up the list yet.
Give us some time.
Because I think even the producer doesn't know the names of all the people we interviewed yet.
Yeah. Sorry, TJ. We'll have to get that info to you soon.
But yeah, they 1.52 is updated to FreeBSD 10 stable revision 271.528. Which is pretty close to what 10.1 will be. And they've also updated Quagga and replaced it with Quagga-RE, which seems... they switched from Quagga-RE to mainline Quagga because the branch didn't seem to be updated anymore. They also disabled large receive offload and TCP segmentation offload on all interfaces by default because it seems to be causing problems in certain cases. However, you can turn it back on if you know that it works with your NIC.
So it looks like mostly a bug fix.
And they actually have
it's
to say, for more information on why we disabled LRO and TSO on your router, read this technical document that we wrote explaining NIC driver performance tuning.
Nice.
It's always nice to have that bit of extra information about what's going on.
Very cool. Okay. Well, next up, we have some news about configuring a Dragonfly BSD desktop. So, of course, you've heard us talk lots about FreeBSD desktops, which that's what PCBSD is, or OpenBSD desktop, because those guys are pretty adamant about running and dogfooding their own stuff, which I always got to give OpenBSD guys props for. That's really good.
It's nice to actually see. We saw some Dragonfly developers at EuroBSDCon, which sometimes it's happened that there wasn't a single person from the project there, and I was like, what's going on here?
Oh, this was kind of neat. Yeah, this year was very well represented by all
actually,
the BSDs.
If I'm reading that username right, the person who posted this is one of the ones that was at the conference.
Oh
no. Okay, so no, it's that person apparently ported the newer sound driver system over from FreeBSD. So if you use his branch from Git, you get newer sound drivers in Dragonfly.
Yep. But of course, we've done all those desktop tutorials in the past. But if you have been interested in trying Dragonfly, this could be a neat way to throw it on maybe some desktop hardware. So in this post, this will basically walk you through some of the steps on how to do that. The original author pulled out an old desktop machine, pretty much gave it a try, and seems to be pretty pleased with the results. And included, we have some Xorg tips and some comments about the possibility of even making a graphical Dragonfly installer, which could be neat. Maybe their own version of like PCBSD for Dragonfly BSD. That would be neat. I'm interested in seeing the community grow that way, so that's cool. But check out that link if you're never have played with Dragonfly. Maybe that's a good way to get your feet wet. Okay, so what is our last article this week? And you'll probably have some pictures, I think, to display for this. But building a mini ITX PF sense box.
Yes.
So this is another
nice,
week, and another
very small form factor device that you can. So it'll be about the size of your typical home router rather than bigger.
Rather than a desktop or whatever. So I guess it's a Jetway J7F2 mini ITX with 4 LAN ports. Those are gigabit, I assume?
And so, I guess that's often what people's older complain about using mono-wall or PF-Sense is, now I have this big noisy computer running in the corner or whatever. But if you can get one of these little mini ITX boards, which they have a nice little scale diagram here showing a standard ATX motherboard out of a computer, a micro one from a smaller computer, and then the mini ITX one, which is more designed for little devices to go under your TV or whatever. And they have some pictures here. You can see it's got 4 network card ports. It even has audio and all the different video outs. So can also be used as a media center if you wanted. Although with that many NICs, is pretty much geared towards being a router. And they show it being put together. You stick regular RAM in it. That's the other nice thing is it takes... if I'm reading this right, it takes regular RAM rather than laptop RAM, which is slightly less expensive that way.
Oh, where I'm trying to see it on the pictures where the RAM memory is.
It's just a Corsair stick, but I can't quite zoom in enough to tell. But yes, the size of that stick, that definitely...
there's a cable block.
But it definitely looks full size rather than a SODIMM. So apparently this nice. Jetway board has the VSC7 1.5 gigahertz processor on it. So as you can see, it basically doesn't even need a fan. It's got this tiny little thing, so it'll be nice and quiet.
Possibly cooled is cool. Like that's just less moving parts, the better.
Yeah.
So it looks like you put a gigabyte Corsair DDR2 in there, and then a 4 gig compact flash,
and it's all good to go.
Did it say? Did he post how much it cost him to?
I
didn't see a dollar number on this.
Yeah.
Just out of curiosity.
But I do know you can buy these little Jetway things on Amazon.
Yeah.
And then, depending what you're doing, it might be because he, used a leftover stick of RAM he had or whatever.
Sure. But I'm sure that's definitely an affordable way to go ahead and build something like this. That's cool, though. That's very cool. So, yeah, if you guys are looking for an excuse to have another good weekend project and build yourself a new router, this is a nice one that you could put up on the shelf.
And they talk about running Snort, Squid, FreeSwitch, and OpenBGPD on it.
Nice. So I'm sure we'll follow that in the future if he has more posts on how that's working. Okay, well, I think that's all of our weekly news roundup articles we have here. So we'll be back in just a moment with our next segment. Okay, we're back with our feedback section. So we'll start this week with Daemon writing in about IPsec. He says, I've been a longtime user of FreeBSD on the back end. He has recently ditched his very nice Edge Router Lite for an ALX-based FreeBSD install. He said, although everything now is much easier on FreeBSD, I rather dislike IP tables with a passion. He says, I'm stuck on IPsec. He said, I'm trying to replicate a site-to-site VPN where the remote end is a router OS-based
MikroTik.
Okay. He said, ERL to router OS works just fine, but we can't get packets to pass on the FreeBSD to router OS. We have successful phase 1 and phase 2 negotiation, but setkey-d is giving me SAs, and I can see ESP packets arriving and departing, but they're not being decrypted, and he can see errors on his end. He said, setup is somewhat obtuse. It feels about the same as when I set up my first VPN gateway about 15 years ago, and it's a bit unclear where I can look for why things aren't working properly. He said, Raccoon gives me no errors and successfully parses and responds to DPD pings, but traffic just is not making it across. He said, given that FreeBSD is working on a revamp of its IPsec stack and how obtuse IPsec is, would you guys consider an IPsec tutorial to coincide with the finalization of that work? Possibly. Never know. If we can get one written up, sure. He said, given the plethora of rather old IPsec with FreeBSD material on the net right now, it would be great to have something modern, clean, and up-to-date to refer to besides the handbook of quirks, which will likely only detail the FreeBSD to FreeBSD connections.
I would definitely look in the handbook and see what's there, because
that's a good starting place.
The handbook definitely is allowed to cover, connecting your FreeBSD to something else with IPsec, because that's really the point of IPsec as a standard, is being able to connect between devices and stuff, right? OpenVPN is great, but it only works if you control both sides and can put OpenVPN on both sides.
Sure.
But yes, we have most of the revamp of the IPsec stuff is just to improve speed and performance. I don't know that they're improving the configurability
or anything.
I haven't tried to do IPsec before, so I guess I will have to try that.
Ditto here.
And kick the docs in the butt if I have to.
Yeah, get that patch made.
Yeah.
So he says, I should point out I'm in this boat because of you guys. Your podcast stirred up the FreeBSD itch in me, and your do-it-yourself router tutorial sent me down this path. Cool. Well, very cool. That seems to be a common theme we're hearing a lot when we meet people at conferences. Like, your show really made me want to try that out.
Well, also when we interview people, we ask, how did you first get involved in FreeBSD? And it often comes down to, a friend told me to try it. And they did. And it seems like maybe we're having that appeal to a bunch of people. And
that's cool. That's what makes it worthwhile.
Someday in the future, we'll be interviewing someone. How did you first get started in BSD? It's like, well, I saw your podcast and decided to give it a try.
Yeah. BSD Now came out, and I was sitting at the office thinking, wow, this really sucks on Linux, or something, I can't wait to hear those stories. But all right.
So next up is Jan asking about NAS syncing. He says, hello, at my office, we have a Synology NAS that has our documentation. All of the technicians then use a synchronization client called CloudStation that works kind of like Dropbox. It keeps a local copy for all the users of the documentation and syncs up any changes to the file server. Recently, we've become too many people, 15 separate people, for the device to handle, which has led to unpredictable and erratic behavior, which is a bad thing.
Ouch.
The solution currently being discussed is buying a bigger Synology NAS, which would likely have similar problems, or buying Dropbox for the team, or simply putting the local files and documentation on Microsoft SharePoint, or multiple separate Microsoft SharePoints for some reason.
A large
exactly. What I'd like to know is whether FreeNAS supports a CloudStation or Dropbox-like folder synchronization that can scale. I'm 99% sure that FreeNAS supports OwnCloud, which does have a synchronization client for like Windows, Mac, even your cell phone, mobile Linux, etc. So you can definitely give that a try. Depending how you do it, you can also use like a network drive on, off of FreeNAS. The difference there is obviously with the synchronization client, if two people edit in the file at the same time, it might try to merge the changes, whereas with just a plain network drive, if person A saves and then person B saves. So if both open version A and then generate versions B and C, if you save B and then save C, all the changes from B would be lost.
Sure.
And that's where the synchronization stuff comes in better. But in general, yes, I don't know what's happening inside that Synology and its Linux to be able to die after 15 people just accessing documentation.
That seems like a really small number, but whatever. But FreeNAS, you can do that. You can set up your own cloud. Own cloud, like Alan said, it has good clients. So even on your mobile device,
and it'll scale based on the number and size of CPUs you have, because it's just using PHP FPM in the background. So it'll run as many separate processes as it needs to saturate all your CPUs. And it really isn't going to use that much CPU. So I can't imagine 15 people could bog down.
Maybe when you hit 1,500, then let us know. But
even 150, if they're all like editing movies or something, you might bog down in FreeNAS. I guess the bigger thing is because the FreeNAS is more open and lets you have access to more stuff, you get telemetry, so you can actually tell maybe what part is being slow. It's like, the problem is that all the disks are saturated because somebody's client over here is doing something silly and like accessing a document 1,000 times a second or something, and you can fix that. Just with a black box like a commercial NAS, you have no idea what's happening inside.
Yeah, it's really hard to do any kind of meaningful debugging on your own.
And if you work for a company and they're not just going to let you repurpose a server and install FreeNAS or whatever, you can talk to IX and buy a box that as far as your boss is concerned, it'll be like a Synology except for to work.
Just you got an old desktop lying around or something, just throw it on there as a test case, see if it works. That's a good way to prove to management that, hey, this may be a much better solution.
And
but drop us a line. Be curious to know how that goes in the future, if you're able to make a switch, or what your feedback or what your testing shows with it.
This next question I'll let you do since it's PCBSD.
Okay. This is from Dale. He's asking about PCBSD booting. He says, I have FreeBSD 9 and /10 servers. He said, my laptop, a T61 ThinkPad, is dual boot, Win 7 and Linux, Ubuntu. Most recently, before that, he had Mint. He said, I've experimented with PCBSD on and off, but never satisfied enough to make me leave Linux when I have a Unix desktop on my laptop. He said, I listened to 2 recent interviews with the Luminary developer, or Lumina in this case, gave me a reason to try again. And there was also mate traffic recently on the FreeBSD questions list, which is true. He said the install failed partway through with some kind of grub error and the laptop wouldn't boot. It was waiting at a grub prompt. So he said, I downloaded the latest copy of Mint, ran it live, mounted on my drive read-only, copied off critical data, deleted the old Ubuntu partition, and then installed Mint on the same partition. At the time, I thought it was curious that Mint wouldn't mount the Windows partition read-write. It reported that Windows hadn't shut down the drive correctly. More on this later. I assumed this was related to the failed PCBSD install. I rebooted the laptop, grubs menu, and booted into Mint again. He said, when I finally booted back into Windows, I discovered I had forgotten to hibernate the system when I last shut it down. Previously, I only went as far as the grub prompt to get to the drive open and drop into the PCBSD install DVD and rebooted into PCBSD install. Windows came back from hibernation after shutting down normally and rebooting into Mint. Mint was able to mount the drive read-write. So he said, so what should my process have been with PCBSD? Why did the install fail? How could I have recovered without running like a baby to Linux? Or should I be asking somewhere else? Well, I can't remember if we replied to you last week while I was in Euro or not. Like, did some email chatter, but definitely if you could send us the specific error messages you got, that would be helpful. Like during the install, like what actual step failed, what command failed, what the error was. I did respond to somebody last week. I can't remember if it was you, but one of the things we found was they were installing to a partition that was extended, extended DOS partition, and that's what caused the install to work. So BSD, for those who don't know, you need to install to a primary partition. So you can't do like an extended DOS partition, or if it's a primary, it shouldn't be after an extended partition. It needs to be one of the initial primary.
And this is why GPT is better.
Yes.
Although there's a reason why you can't do that because he's booting Windows and Windows is laying over GPT.
That's right. So again, I can't remember if that was you I emailed this last week or not, but if it was or if it wasn't, that still could be the same problem. So I would suspect it's probably something to do with your partitioning. What I've done and have instructed people to do when they're going to try and do a dual boot with Windows or Linux or whatever is first in Windows, I mean, you can use their disk management utility and just create a new primary partition. You don't have to format it or anything, but once you got your partition set and the size set the way you want, then boot the PCBSD install and just point it at that primary at that point, and you should.
How does that work? I guess you have this magic in your grub to find the Windows install and add it to the list?
Yeah. So our grub will build menu entries for Windows. Like it checks all the partitions, says, ooh, this is a Windows system startup partition or whatever, and it'll just add it to the list automatically. So that's what I would recommend.
My installer will just clobber your entire computer and be like, haha, FreeBSD everywhere.
Right. No, we've tried to be nice and do some dual boot stuff. I think it tries to detect Linux as well and may list that in the menu. I don't think it's smart enough to say, hey, it's this particular flavor of Linux, but just generic Linux, boot this. He said, how could I have recovered without running like a baby to Linux? Well, at this point, you haven't actually installed PCBSD, so that would have been a little more difficult to recover. In particular, if you're having partitioning problems, like there may not have been a lot you could do even with the PCBSD install media because it wanted to do primaries or whatever.
But yeah, we'd have to know what the error was to tell you how to recover from it.
Yeah. If without the error message, I'd just be shooting in the dark, just telling you stuff. But if you have more information on this, great, send it in, or shoot it over to the PCBSD mailing lists or our bug tracker as well, and I'll be happy to take a look at it and we can figure out what happened in your case and try and get it resolved.
Does your install media have enough stuff to be able to mount an NTFS partition from the live CD?
Yeah, it does. You could mount NTFS. I'm not sure if that would work. I think it's still using the Fuse NTFS, so I wonder if that's the same thing Linux is using, if that still would have given them errors, like it's busy and you can't mount. Well,
in this case, he had hibernated the system instead of shut it down, and so Windows was in an inconsistent state.
Any difference in your case? Yeah. So not sure that would have helped at all in this case, but anyway, all that stuff is on there, and for those who don't know, the PCBSD installer, you can always right-click on the background and open up as many X terms as you want. It's basically a full system recovery media as well. We have a lot of those utilities available. So if you need to restamp grub or mount disks and whatnot, tweak things, that's very possible to do.
Cool. Okay. Next question is from Joe about virtual networking. He says currently he's using OpenWRT on a WNDR 3800 as a router/firewall and using a quote hacked Seagate GoFlex Home that he's installed Debian on to be his NAS. So far, it's been enough for me, though I'm writing in to ask if I can virtualize an OpenBSD instance as a firewall router, a FreeBSD instance as a file server, and a Debian instance as an OwnCloud server. Well, if you do FreeBSD or FreeNAS, you can just install OwnCloud directly on the file server instead of doing it as a separate OwnCloud server. He says, the rationale behind that is that I would like to homogenize all the hardware as one box, but still be secure. Since I will be moving from Europe, or moving around Europe for the next few years, I understand virtualization will use more resources than a jail. So he has a couple of questions. A, could I do all of this using FreeBSD in jails? Doing a router in a jail is kind of complicated. It's possible, but it's complicated.
Maybe with vimage or something.
Yeah, but then you can't use PF very well, and He says, finding a way to have a router and a NAS on the same OS without any major security issues. With FreeNAS, you can do VirtualBox now. So you could run a pfSense or your own router in VirtualBox on top of a FreeNAS, or you could do a base FreeBSD install where then you could use Beehive or VirtualBox to run your pfSense, and I guess optionally if you wanted to do your you wanted an OpenBSD instance, that would work, or Debian for his own cloud.
Sure.
But for the file server, I recommend you make the file server the base OS so that you have access to the physical hard drives directly instead of virtualized. Virtualization for storage is not great. It's even when people are building big VMwares, generally what they do is they have their VMware box and then they have a FreeNAS as the backing. Right? IX actually got the FreeNAS and TrueNAS certified by VMware, so they're actually a supported way to run your network. And then 2, he says, would it be feasible to virtualize all of these instances? It surely be ideal for me to not have 2 or 3 separate servers to lug around. So you can have them all on the same machine, but I would make the storage stuff happen on the host rather than in a VM. Although it's possible to do in a VM, and you can do stuff like hardware pass-through, so you can pass the disk controller through into the VM, like if you have like an LSI card or something that your hard drives are attached to. But it gets complicated pretty quick, and especially for a small home thing, I would say FreeBSD on the base machine, and then you can put your ZFS or whatever on it, and then you can use Beehive or VirtualBox to run your own BSD router firewall thingy, and you can still run Debian if you want to run your own cloud there, but you can run OwnCloud in a jail or in a VM with FreeBSD, and OwnCloud works very, very nicely on FreeBSD. So you can use FreeNAS as the base as well with their virtualization support using VirtualBox. If you want it all to have web interface, you get a bit more flexibility by just using vanilla FreeBSD, but it's that much more work to set up. So it's up to you which way you want to go.
Cool. Okay. Well, next up from Boston, asking about FreeNAS and Bash. So he says, hello, I listen to your show from beginning to end, and I love it. Keep on with the great work. He said, there's been so much talk about shell shock this week, so I will toss a question out about it. He said, I have a FreeNAS 9.2.1.7, just CIFS and SSH services are running, and OwnCloud 7.0.2 is installed. I have no additional packages installed or some other services running on FreeNAS. He said, FreeNAS is not facing the internet. SSH, CIFS, and OwnCloud are only accessible on the LAN. Good for you. He said, according to the article, and then he gives a link to the PC World article about how to protect your computer from bash shell. He said he did try this in the terminal, I guess, on the FreeNAS box, and he got the vulnerable. This is a test string.
Well, in particular, that test string specifically starts bash, right? It doesn't use whatever the shell on the system is. It's specifically starting bash.
It runs bash.
So on a FreeBSD system,
of course, bash is vulnerable.
So on a FreeBSD system, that will either say, I can't find bash, or your bash is vulnerable, or if you've updated, it won't.
So he says the FreeNAS team says bash is not the system shell of FreeNAS or FreeBSD. He said, my question, did I do anything wrong so that I got vulnerable? This is a test. Have I installed any additional packages? How come I got this result? So what the FreeNAS and FreeBSD guys are saying is bash, well available and potentially installed on your machine, isn't used as a default shell or used by any of the utilities that they use. So
it's just like there because some people prefer it.
Want to run it as a shell. So the version on there may indeed have been vulnerable, but just update your FreeNAS. If you're concerned about it, there's a new version you can grab.
If you're running 9.2.1.8, you're already sorted.
So same thing goes with PCBSD. Yes, we have bash available. It's a package. It could be installed, but unless you explicitly set your shell to bash, most likely you're not using it.
And you're definitely not exposing it via the web interface, and neither is FreeNAS.
No.
Although we've seen some interesting ways to get a shell going on with that shell shock, including Qmail. If you have any redirects that go to a pipe, might fork the default shell, which under FreeBSD or whatever is SH, and it'll be fine. But under Linux, it'll be bash, and that'll be bad.
Yeah, so that kind of answers his additional question. He said, what conditions have to be met in order for someone to exploit the bash bug on FreeNAS? FreeNAS and SSH facing the internet. Anything else? How can they exploit the bug if they cannot log into the shell? Well, like Alan said, they can't really unless there's some service that's facing the net that they could access it to expose the bug. So,
if you can influence the value of a environment variable. And so CGI scripts were the biggest one there because by default, what the web server does is pass all the HTTP headers and like the requests and all the details about the CGI process, including any variables people posted in a form or whatever, as environment variables. And so, if there's a form field on a website that then gets fed into bash somewhere, then you could stick that bit of shellcode in there and it would run. And that would be bad. And so... yeah, there's a bunch of different interesting ways to get to exploit the bash bug, but unless you've gone around and purposely made your machine vulnerable, then your FreeBSD and FreeNAS should be perfectly safe.
Yep.
And there's fixes out now, so you just update your packages or the version of FreeNAS.
So if you don't know for sure whether that's exposed or not, it's just better to safe to update it. Just be sure that it's taken care of.
On the 2 out of 100 and something machines we have. Where we have bash because, customers that don't know what BSD is just are more comfortable if they get a bash as their Linux shell or whatever. Once you install bash, they pretty much don't realize they're not using Linux, except for, when they run top and it actually has useful information like, oh, what's this?
Oh, yeah, right.
But,
cool.
So not a big deal.
Okay. Well, I hope we answered your questions, guys. And of course, keep writing us in if you have any other questions. So as we close the show, we're going to mention, of course, all the tutorials will be posted in their entirety at bsdnow.tv. Send your questions, comments, show ideas, topics, or stories you'd like mentioned on the show to feedback@bsdnow.tv. That's the only place we monitor, so please try and send stuff there. Also, slides from most of the EuroBSD talks are already up. So hopefully we'll have links to all the videos as well soon in case you didn't get to see it.
We were promised... less than a month after the conference is over, they should have the videos up.
Yes.
They had a nice group doing. Yeah, they had a nice group doing the videos, so I'm expecting really nice videos, and I'm looking forward to it because I think of all the conferences I've been to, I saw the least number of talks this time.
Yeah,
because,
that's true. We were busy. We were doing interviews and
even just talking to some people in the hallway. I guess it was like me, you, and Jordan, and a couple people were talking in the hallway, and we're like, oh, we missed a whole talk.
Yeah, whoops. That happens, and you need to have the freedom to do that when you're at a conference because sometimes that hallway gets distracting. And it's like, hey, we're solving
the hallway is oftentimes the best part of the conference. So
yeah, that's the fourth track in this case. Anyway, so of course, as we teased earlier, we did get a lot of great interviews. So keep an eye out. Look forward to those in coming months. Also, the Book of PFs, 3rd edition, is now available to buy at No Starch Press digitally. That's nostarch.com/PF3. And physical copies will be available later this month. So FYI, if you're a heavy PF consumer or want to learn.
Yeah, speaking of that, if you come to Meet BSD, make sure to bring your physical copy of the design and implementation of FreeBSD, and you can get some autographs in that. I think
some of the authors will
George
be there.
So and Kirk will definitely be there.
Not sure about Robert Watson.
He's a maybe, and all 3 of them, then that'd be quite the queue. I brought my copy to Sophia to get signed, and I ended up giving it away as a gift instead.
Right? I got to buy a copy still.
I ordered 2 more from Amazon last night. So, they also told us that the ebook version of Design and Implementation should be available soon. They had just apparently they're all generated from the same thing, and it looked fine on Kindle, but it didn't work. The diagrams were cut off on Android, and they had to make some changes. And but they expect that to show up for sale very soon.
Cool. Also, we'll mention as we close here, OpenBSD 5.6 pre-orders are now up on their new store. That's openbsdstore.com, and they have some other cool stuff up there. So take a look, get your pre-orders in now. And for those who don't know, of course, you can watch us live Wednesdays at 2 p.m. Eastern or 1800 UTC if you'd like to watch all the clever banter that happens in between the recorded segments and us interacting with you guys in IRC. That's a good place to do that. So we thank you guys so much for watching this week. Really enjoyed having you guys on the show, and I'm sure we'll talk more about EuroBSD in coming weeks. And then we got Meet BSD like right after. So it's going to be an exciting fall this year on BSD Now. So thank you guys so much for watching, and look forward to having you on same time next week.
And if you make it out to a conference, make sure to pick up your awesome FreeBSD Foundation water bottle.
Ah, yes.
They're great.
Yes. Got to do that. Do you have a picture of it?
I was holding up the one I bought.
Oh, okay. Okay, cool. All right. Well, thanks, guys. We'll see you same time next week. Have a good week, folks.